I'm not going to lie to anybody. Like, yeah, a win is a win is a win. But that was tough to watch.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. As always, I'm Brayden Iwasko. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Brayden5Iwasko. Carter First, too, as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. Oh, if you haven't followed us on our main Twitter account, it's Locked On Jays. And hit the subscribe button if you haven't already here on YouTube. It honestly means a whole ton, and it's free. Doesn't take up any space. It's not hard to do. You get your shorts, your live streams, your podcasts, your videos, the whole ordeal. So hit that subscribe button for us if you don't mind, and you're coming back all the time anyway. Lots to talk about. Obviously, lots to talk about. It was a hell of a game. It was just something else. There was zero pitching. Honestly, a game that made me want to pull my hair out. I was debating finding the tallest building and the nearest window because I thought that game was going to go downhill. The offense was amazing. We might be in another Botember. But when the pitching's this bad, Carter, what the hell do we do? This is straight up terrifying. How do you feel?
Yeah, it's crazy to call a Botember 2 days into September. That's absolutely wild. Even though it has been a pretty fun 2 days. It just felt like a game the Toronto Blue Jays were really trying to throw away and really trying their best to lose. I mean, they get up 8-1 in the game. Again, so much fun to watch. Its offense scored 12 runs. Definitely not upset about that, but you got multiple pitchers that come in. Jose Berrios off 9 days of rest. Like, I could have told you that this was not going to go well. I thought it might have went, slightly better than the way it went. But we've seen this recipe with Jeff Hoffman, with Eric Lauer, and now with Jose Berrios. If you give pitchers this long of a rest time between appearances, it's not going to go very well. So I know Jose Berrios hasn't been pitching that well in general, and like the stuff hasn't looked as good, honestly, as we progress throughout the season. But I'm giving him a little bit of slack in this instance because, again, 9 days between a start, like that's a tough thing to kind of bounce back from and stay sharp with. But like the game of George Springer, like this guy, it's absolutely insane. Like we're not even like this is a career year type numbers for George Springer, not even just with the Toronto Blue Jays anymore. This is like one of George Springer's best years in the major leagues. Like he's sitting around 300. He's on pace to hit over 30 home runs this year, probably being the home run leader on the Toronto Blue Jays. He might get MVP votes. That might be a little bit like overreaching, but he's not that far off from it. He's top 10 in pretty much every single AL offensive statistical category. Another 2 home runs in this series, is second in all time. Obviously, in leadoff home runs, you guys probably hear about that on the broadcast all the time. It's just day in and day out. It's crazy what George Springer has managed to do in this season, and in a time of need where all odds were really against George Springer. And honestly, a lot of people were against, including myself, the Toronto Blue Jays. And George Springer has been a force to be reckoned with on this Toronto Blue Jays ball club. Definitely helps when he's going off. Daulton Varsho is hitting a home run, seeming like every series. And then you got Bichette leading the major leagues in hits and just being dominant and starting to show the power stick as well in this game. And just last thing I wanted to throw in with like kind of, the quick overview is a little bit of luck going the Toronto Blue Jays' way, because I don't think they scored 12 runs on Nick Lodolo if he pitches in this game. So a little bit of luck on their side, I guess. You could say Scott Barlow, who pitched in last night's game, started the game to not go very well from there, and they just caught fire, kept it going throughout the entire game, and thank God they did with the pitching that we got once again from the starting rotation and the bullpen.
It was a tough game because it was so exciting when the Toronto Blue Jays were hitting. It looked like they were going to do damage every single time somebody went up to the plate. It didn't matter who it was. But the pitching was so bad that it really made me question. And I guess after the last game, I started to have the questions in my head about what can this team do in the playoff race with this kind of pitching. This game then sort of really brought those feelings to the forefront. And Carter, you asked me a couple episodes ago, where am I at the panic button with this pitching staff in the bullpen? It's almost getting there. I'm almost hitting the panic button. That's how close we are. Like, I'm a 9 right now. It just keeps getting worse because it seems like everybody that goes in, it's like, you're going to have 1 or 2 blowups from either the bullpen or a starter every time they go out. And it's terrifying. And it is the rest thing, right? We always talk rest versus rust here. And I want to get like the negativity out of the way before I really get into the offense, because there's a lot of guys to showcase on the offensive side of the ball that we can talk about. We'll save that for the second. But I mean, the most prevalent thing is, and probably if you're watching this podcast, you watched that game last night being like, wow, this is horrible. And you're probably not leaving that game feeling good. And it goes back to the rest versus rust. How this has been managed has been horrible. The 6-man rotation, going back and forth from doing it, not doing it. Oh, maybe we will do it. Oh, but we'll give this guy a day of rest, has been terrible. And I thought John Schneider's done a pretty good job all year, but throughout all year, it was pretty hard to do a bad job because all of these guys were performing pretty well or well enough. Now you're getting to the point where you have to make decisions, and the decisions aren't the right ones. Like, Carter, me and you, before Bieber come back, we had the conversation of, should this be a 6-man rotation? I think we both, even before that, I was thinking maybe that's an option. And then, as we started to go and took a look at the off days, we both came to the conclusion that that's probably not a recipe for success here. That can't happen. We saw what happened with Jeff Hoffman, which you mentioned, about being on too many days of rest. We saw what happened with Eric Lauer. Now we're seeing what happens with Jose Berrios. So now, what is John Schneider going to do? Somebody has to move to this bullpen full time. That's it. That just has to happen, because you can't roll a guy out there on so many days rest. That's where we're at, Carter.
Well, and that's Eric Lauer's spot, I think, at this point. It's the second time that he's thrown Eric Lauer in this bullpen. You got to give some respect to the guys that kind of got you here. Not even just this season, for the seasons prior. You had Jose Berrios really being a centerpiece of this team. Chris Bassitt, just again giving you such gritty outings. Going in late innings, going for that extra inning when you need it, going on short rest, going on extra rest. It doesn't really seem to affect Chris Bassitt too much. It seems like he's very resilient into really any sort of setting that John Schneider is going to throw him in. But we talked about just how it was going to be managed with the days off, with the 6-man rotation. And it was never supposed to be this permanent thing. But when you have your own player, Kevin Gausman, speaking out against it, saying, hey, I don't like this 6-man rotation. I don't like having so many days rest in between starts. It gets bad to a point when your own players are speaking out about it. But to kind of maybe summarize what John Schneider, or like what he could be doing, this might be what he's thinking, is that you've had Jose Berrios pitch this entire season. You've had Chris Bassitt pitch this entire season. And are you going to rely on those two guys specifically in a playoff scenario, or are you going to need Shane Bieber to be at the top of his game? Are you going to need Max Scherzer to be at the top of his game? Are you going to need Kevin Gausman to continue what he's doing, has been doing in these last 10 starts, so he can get pitch in a playoff scenario? So I think what John Schneider at least has been trying to do, and what it looks like, he's really prioritizing Shane Bieber, which is a good thing, obviously, coming back from Tommy John. You don't have the most amount of time to get him where you want him to be. Max Scherzer has had some injury issues. Again, 41-year-old, you want him to be set up for the most amount of success. And then Kevin Gausman, who just has the most upside out of your pitchers. So I think he's really trying to prioritize those three specifically and make sure that they're kind of on a regulated schedule. And then if you do have to, not necessarily like screw Bassitt and Berrios over and set them up for failure whatsoever. But if you're going to have to choose one guy that's going to have to kind of go through some of this adversity and maybe not be in the most regular schedule that he's used to, I think you're going to go with Chris Bassitt. You're going to go with Jose Berrios, Eric Lauer, these guys that maybe don't have that strikeout stuff and that crazy high upside. So you have these playoff guys ready to go and well rested for a playoff scenario.
Yeah, and I don't want to say it's sort of lamb for the slaughter, but that's sort of what it is, right? Who's the sacrificial lamb here? And if it has to be Jose Berrios or Chris Bassitt, because of what Shane Bieber can be, I do get that. But at the end of the day, the AL East race is tightening up, and you don't have that many more games to piss away. So it's time now to figure it out, lock it in. Who are your guys? And you got to start rolling, because you can't afford to be giving games away. If the Blue Jays would have lost this past game, Carter, it would be full on disaster panic mode right now. And this team now having to scrape and claw for that top spot in the AL East. Whereas, hey, maybe you don't drop some of these games. We've seen how the bullpen struggled. Why are we throwing more struggling on top of that with the starting pitchers? As the offense, who have been who have been pretty good this entire season, this offense, but have gone through spells of good and spells of bad. And I think you can't go into games relying on the team to score 12 runs. That should never be a thought process in your head.
Yeah, that hot take coming from Braden Owasco
Yeah.
there. You can't score 12 runs every single baseball game.
Like it's frustrating because I think out of, as a casual fan, you think, wow, what a fun baseball game that was. High scoring, that's great. But when you look at the big picture of things here, I have a lot more negatives to take away from this baseball game. It made me feel horrible in comparison to the good that happened. And at the end of the day, yes, a win is a win. But it's the playoff picture that has to be in my head of what this team is going to be. And that's what we have to start looking at. And don't get me wrong, Jose Berrios probably not a starter in your playoffs right now. So take with that what you will. But at the end of the day, the team around him, the bullpen, when I have a bunch of guys to get into on the bullpen as well, that I thought some guys looked really good and some guys didn't really do much for me. But I think we'll talk about that, save that for the second segment, go into that and some of the offense, Carter. But is there anything final you want to say on this pitching the starting pitching today? Because, I mean, it just wasn't good. And I think I don't want to say we can just leave it at that, but this is going to be a John Schneider decision. And it's got to happen sooner rather than later. And other than that, it was a terrible start. That's pretty much all we can say.
Yeah, and you get an untimely error from IKF as well. There's getting some questions on why is IKF kind of on the team when he can do similar things to, a guy like Andres Gimenez, Ernie Clement, and then you have a guy like Joey Loperfido, who even when he was with the Toronto Blue Jays was playing very good baseball, but is a different conversation. And so, but just a bad timed error for Jose Berrios, a guy that, again, didn't have his stuff. I'm giving him more of the benefit of the doubt because it's very hard to be sharp with that long of rest. But at this point, like, you're kind of limited in your starts. Like, you don't have a lot more time to prove what you got in this starting rotation. When you got guys opposed from you, still in your starting rotation, but you got Shane Bieber, who's looked very good. Max Scherzer, when he's healthy and when he's well rested, looks very good. Kevin Gausman has been really good the last 10 starts. And then Chris Bassitt, who's kind of been, overcoming adversity, whether you throw him in the first inning, the ninth inning for 4 innings, for 2 innings, like, he's going to be effective or at least give you a chance to win a game. Jose Berrios is seeming like maybe some of it not his fault, but working his way kind of out of this playoff rotation. So we'll have to see again down the stretch. But now there's 23, 22 games left. Like, the schedule is dwindling down very quickly. There's a lot of important games left, but a decision, like you said, will have to be made. And like, you kind of talked with the bullpen. I'll leave this for the second segment, but I think you've been a little bit hard on some of the guys in the bullpen. Again, recently, it's kind of tough to see you give them any sort of credit. But yeah, like you said, there was some bright spots in this game. A couple guys looking like they're starting to catch their footing a little bit. A guy we actually got at the trade deadline who had a very rough 5-start stretch or 5-appearance stretch, who has kind of dialed it in for the last 2. But we'll dive into the bullpen and obviously a ton more from the game because we could almost break it down inning by inning, which we normally go game by game. But there's so many runs that we can almost go inning by inning. We'll dive into all of it coming up. Today's episode is sponsored by Upside. Hey, Locked On Blue Jays fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind and get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code SEASON and get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas that you already needed. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out at any time to your bank account, PayPal, or e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. You can download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code, that is SEASON, for a limited time 25 cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code SEASON, and that is for a limited 25 cent per gallon bonus. Offers may vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions.
So, Carter, today's episode also brought to you by Game Time. Sorry, I keep switching that on you. Today's episode also brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like catching a baseball game live, the energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team in person, but actually getting tickets, that's the tough part. Login screens, surprise fees, queues. It takes all the fun out of it. And trust me, This is my biggest problem with other ticketing sites is there are the queues, there are the login screens, the surprise fees. With Game Time, I'm signed in. I just get in there and I do what I got to do. The Game Time app gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by that Game Time guarantee, which always gives you 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. That's the big one for me. I hate going to the checkout thinking I have, I'm paying this much for tickets. Oh, there's a surprise $20 fee on the back end. Well, that's no fun because that might just change my decision of which ticket I'm going to buy. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. So, Carter, continuing on, I did want to talk a little bit about the bullpen because there were some guys that I think, again, I had high faith in that they were going to make a return to form. And I think we saw the start of it with one of the guys that I've liked. Obviously, the past few games for him have not been very good, but that's Louis Varland, a guy that I think after that trade, seeing what he can do, I really like what he's got. The stuff, the speed, the velocity, all of it. I think he is a good piece. This was a really, really nice outing to see from him. A little bit of a bounce back. He goes 1 2/3 innings, gives up 1 hit and 1 K as well. At the end of the day, there are some guys that I give grief and that are very, very willing and they need to be given grief because they've been that bad. Louis Varland's a guy that I was always sort of on the I think he can come back boat instead of, oh my God, this is done forever. This guy stinks. Some of you guys disagree with that. And we've seen some guys say that in the comments about a lot of these bullpen arms. But Louis Varland, to me, stand out, little bounce back game here. Hopefully this sets him up good for the future.
When we traded for Louis Varland, you knew what he was good at and you knew what his shortcomings were. And it's really the secondary pitches. He kind of got rid of like being fancy. He just decided to go with his first 2 pitches, go with the 2 pitches that he trusts the most, that he uses the most in the knuckle curve and the fastball. And he was effective. He got some whiffs on that knuckle curve. The last 2 starts now have been 1 2/3 innings with no earned runs. That's what you want from your, higher leverage arm. You don't want to, I don't want to throw this guy at least in closing roles. I don't want to throw him in the 9th inning. If he comes out in the 7th, even the 8th, I think the 8th is pushing it a little bit. I'm more comfortable with Scherzer Gimenez in those outings. But like we talk about on a lot of these episodes, just every single bullpen arm is going to go through some stretches where they are not very good. And I'd much rather Louis Varland, Gimenez, Brendan Little, no matter who it ends up being, go through those stretches right now, even though, it is a tough time with the Yankee series coming up, rather than in the playoffs where they give up, a 4 spot like Scott Barlow did today. Like that, those are the ones that really hurt you and have those massive innings. You can give up a solo shot here, you can give up a run here and there, again, depending on game scenario, and be relatively fine. But yeah, it was a tough stretch for Louis Varland. Just get back to the basics, throw the fastball a little bit more. You have, 99, 100 miles an hour in the tank. Seems like a lot easier said than done, obviously, but the knuckle curve plays. Maybe he's got to get one of those pitches back into his arsenal, the slider, whether it's a changeup. No matter what it is, I think he still needs that 3rd pitch just to be a little bit more versatile. But yeah, starting to slowly get back on track is what you want to see from Louis Varland. So I think Gimenez looked like, again, I'm not too worried about Gimenez. Didn't really struggle with command too much. I don't think that was really the issue. I think you just had some good swings from the Reds. TJ Friedel, a nice home run. Like you can't get that upset about it. And then Jeff Hoffman, again, anytime Jeff Hoffman's going to come out in the next month, everyone is going to be sitting on the edge of their seat, holding their breath, trying to just will their way to a playoff win, a regular season win, obviously, for the next few weeks, but then hopefully a playoff win when it comes down to it. Because Jeff Hoffman is my closer. We were talking about this in one of our group chats as well. And it's who else do you go to? Do you want to go to Louis Varland? Do you want to go to Brendan Little right now? Again, I see the 3-on-3 Gimenez argument, but I think people are, just going to get as mad, when he walks 2 or 3 batters in an inning and then you blow it that way. At least with Jeff Hoffman, you get your money's worth when he blows the game. So like I said in the last episode, you're going to have to trust a lot of these higher leverage guys. You're going to have to trust the guys that you've been trusting this entire season. So instead of getting mad at them and you just berating them and saying that they're the worst pitchers ever, maybe try to hype them up. Maybe try to, at least at worst case, give yourself some false hope because those are the guys that you're going to be seeing in a playoff scenario.
Yeah, it's where we're at now, right? You have to rely on these guys. There's nowhere else to turn. There's no one you're going to pick up off waivers or bring from AAA. We'll talk about that right away. that's going to fill this role. Jeff Hoffman is your guy. Love it or hate it, this is the guy that's rolling out there. He's your closer. He did the job today, and this is where we're at. We have to just hope that he doesn't have massive blowups. And I think for the majority of this season, you've seen that Jeff Hoffman is and can be very good. The problem is when one of those happen or a couple of those in succession happen, the fan base loses their mind, and rightfully so. To be honest with you, a closing role, you're put in there to do a job, but it is one of the toughest jobs in baseball. So, I don't want to cut anybody slack. I'm not giving Jeff Hoffman a pass. I was very, very upset the last few games, and I guess not at Hoffman necessarily in the last one here, because Brendan Little took the brunt of that anger, as he should have. But yeah, the bullpen is just, we're at the point. Hopefully these guys work their way out of it. That's it. Tough. There's nowhere else to turn. Couple things, Carter, since we're on bullpen talk. Let's talk about him. Dallin Wilton brought this up. Trey Savage.
Before we go to that, can we go back to Jeff Hoffman really quick?
Sure.
A couple things that I wanted to end it with Hoffman. Like, there was a lot of moments in this outing specifically that you could see how Jeff Hoffman is like in top 5 in the MLB in saves. You can see how he has some pretty good strikeout stuff. Because when he is locating the slider, like you have the last pitch to Ke'Bryan Hayes. That is a 97-mile-an-hour fastball on the black on the outside corner. Like, that is such a good pitch. That's such an effective pitch. That is very hard to do damage with. So we've seen these little moments, again, this entire season, and I guess that's the issue, is that every single MLB player is probably going to give you some flashes, but how consistently can they do it? And the numbers, I mean, they're not very good. Again, a 5 ERA. He does have, 7, 8 blown saves. I know when you look at that, like those are the numbers that are going to speak out to you. But just another thing with Jeff Hoffman is that when you look at all of these other relief pitchers that come in, or even starting pitchers that come in any other inning, every time, if you come out in the 8th inning, and even if you give up 6 runs, in theory, your team still has a chance to come out in the 9th inning and, kind of get your back and try to win that game for you. You give up runs in the 7th inning, the 6th inning, whatever. You're Jeff Hoffman, you're in the bottom of the 9th inning, and you give up 2 runs. Like, that's it. Like, that's the game is in your hands. So that does come with the added pressure. We've seen it from Brendan Little, what it can do to him, Tommy Nance, what it can do to him. So there, like, again, you have a lot of these guys that you're going to have to rely on down the stretch, but there's 2 guys that I think Toronto Blue Jays fans could at least be hopeful about, and you did bring up one of them. I'll throw back over to you to talk about the Blue Jays' previous first-round draft pick in Trey Savage.
Yeah, Trey Savage. Dallin Wilton brings him up. We're in our group chat today, our Locked On group chat that we have with the boys that pop on the show every once in a while, and he said, "Why not Trey Savage? Why not pull him up and give him a shot?" He goes 3 scoreless innings in relief in AAA, 6 Ks. He looks good. He does look good. I watched some of the clips of him pitching just when I got home today from work, just because I love to watch this guy chuck the ball. But the problem is where do you bring him in? Yes, maybe in a bullpen role, but that's not really what you're hoping is in Trey Savage's future. You're hoping that he's a starter and can be a starter for this team. Do you pull him up now in the playoffs and can he do damage? We don't know. The jump from AAA to the MLB is very, very aggressive. Don't get me wrong. I think he probably has the skill set to be able to do it. I'm not gonna shut this idea down. But I think as well, if you're going to pull up Trey Savage to do this, you need to pull him up latest next week. Latest. He's got to get a bunch of outings in him. And I just don't know if that is in this management team's head right now. I don't know if that's a move they want to make. And I don't know how I feel about it. I could sit here and tell you that, it's dumb because you don't want to wreck his progression. But then I also have the feeling of, well, you have a shot at it this year. So why not throw everything at the wall and see what sticks? So I don't know. I'm somewhere in the middle a little bit, Carter. And I see the upside, but I also see the possibility of a downside here of the guy coming in, to his first major league outings in deep September in the heat of a title race. And if he gets touched up, well, goodness gracious, I wouldn't know what the guy would be feeling like. So I don't know. How do you feel about this? Dallin gave us his thoughts. He wants it to happen. How about you?
Yeah, that's a super easy one for me. What have we been asking for this Toronto Blue Jays team for the last 5 years, or the last 10 years? You're asking for an AL East title. You're asking for a deep playoff run. If you were in the position to do that with a playoff run, especially with the volatility in this bullpen, how effective Trey Savage has been. Like, I used to be like kind of on that fence, like, oh yeah, the progression, whatever. Just because you use Trey Savage out of the bullpen in a playoff race 1 year doesn't mean he can't just next year go right back to the starting rotation. Like, it's not going to completely just unstretch him out. He's not going to be, all of a sudden now he's only able to throw 2 innings because for a 1 month stretch, he was exclusively out of the bullpen. And yes, maybe it doesn't go that well. He's a rookie. He's, progressed for all the way from the Florida Complex League all the way up to the major leagues. But if you have a guy with that release point, with that, just unique of a release point, of a stretch, of a throw delivery from the mound, why not throw him in a scenario like this? Like, this is what we've been wanting for the last 5 years for sure, maybe even longer than that. That's what the expectation has been amongst this Toronto Blue Jays ball club. Like, would you rather go to a guy like, I don't know, Paxton Schultz, who hasn't been bad by any means, or like a Dylan Tate, for example, or take your shot with Trey Savage, a guy that has been striking people out at a crazy rate, a guy that has pitched in big moments in college, a guy that isn't an 18-year-old coming out of high school. If you have the opportunity to put your best foot forward and have your best players pitch in the biggest scenarios, in the scenarios that are possibly franchise altering, why would you not want your best case scenario out there?
Got to do it soon. It's got to happen within the week. That would be my point. You can't bring him in at the last week of September and then hope that, hope he does good, and then we'll make our decision for the playoffs. No, you got to give him some time to get through a little bit of a growing pain. And you got to just see what he has the rest of the season. Worst case, you throw him back down for the playoffs and you put one of your starters in the bullpen, and that's your move. But you got to do it now. And I don't think that you can wait, because if you wait, I think every day that he's not brought up is another day closer to this not happening at all. And I'm sort of on board. Take your shot. If you think this is your year, which obviously this team does, otherwise they wouldn't have bought at the deadline like they did. Take your shot. Use your guys, whoever it may be, your best team on the field. And, I think we'll talk a little bit more about IKF in a future episode. To me, that's not putting our best foot forward, but that is what it is. Another guy brought back to the Jays, Ryan Borucki, rejoins the Blue Jays. How do you feel about that one, Carter?
Yeah, it's just a depth piece at this point. There's a reason that he got DFA'd and got picked up by the Blue Jays. It's not a bad thing to get an experienced arm within your bullpen, but not a guy that I want to be relying on. The other guy I was actually going to talk about is not Ryan Borucki. It's actually Nick Sandlin, who hasn't been confirmed to come back, but he also hasn't been confirmed to be shut down for the entire season. There has been some progressions. Again, there has been some setbacks as well. But for a team right now that really only has one left-handed pitcher who cannot seem to find the strike zone, for a guy that does have the stuff, the splitter specifically, to get left-handed hitters out, he might be a massive asset down the stretch. A guy that, if he can be healthy, should not have, the most arm fatigue. There's a completely separate issue there, though. You got to deal with, obviously, the throwing arm, which is maybe more volatile and maybe worse off than the latter. But Nick Sandlin could be an option down the stretch. That's the guy that I'm not completely writing off for this Toronto Blue Jays bullpen. And even if, again, it wouldn't be ideal, but if he's just ready for the playoffs and he has to do like live BP, has to do live at-bats, and he can't necessarily throw in a regular season game, like it's one of those things. Do you trust Nick Sandlin, who hasn't thrown, or do you trust a guy like Dylan Tate? Do you trust a guy like Paxton Schultz? Do you trust one of these guys that is going to be a low leverage guy that maybe you've seen and you know what or at least have more of a certainty of what he's going to do? Or do you take that upside pick and throw Nick Sandlin? Those are some of the questions I think John Schneider is going to have to ask himself as we get down the stretch.
Yeah, it's not really a question for us. Again, we can sit here and talk about what we think is right all the live long day, but it doesn't mean that anybody's going to take our advice. Like, we've had conversations around this bullpen and what maybe we think should happen, and we know the situation. But yeah, we're in a tough spot because all we can do is sit here and hope for the best and pray to God that it works out. Carter, I want to talk a little bit about the offense before we move on, just because we've killed a ton of time and have not even gotten to that. So let's talk about that now. I did want to bring this up just before we get into that, actually. Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s play at first base in the 8th inning debatably saves this ball game. It's not the hardest play in the world. I think he sort of fell and probably could have made that play a little smoother. But at the end of the day, if that ball gets through, I think this ball game could have been very different. And it could have ended very different. So I want to love it, love Vlad, hate Vlad, whatever. I think that's a massive play that's going to get overlooked in this ball game. And I think a game that a play that potentially saved this ball game.
See, I don't want to be like a negative person on this podcast, especially with Vladdy, but you could say that about like a diving catch. It's like, oh, if Nathan Lucas doesn't go out and make a sliding catch, or if Daulton Varsho doesn't make a jumping catch in the wall, that could completely change the trajectory of a game. Like you could say that in a lot of scenarios. I don't think this was like this crazy play that Vladdy made. Yeah,
it wasn't a crazy play, but it's 8th inning. You have a runner on already. You could bring the go-ahead run to the plate. Instead, Vlad makes that play. I'm not saying it's the.
I think you're blazing a little bit here. I think you're being a little too nice for Vlad. Like if anything, bring up his offensive performance. Bring up the 3 for 4, not that random defensive play that he made.
This is one of those for me. It's not a play that I'm like, oh my god, it's the best play of all time. But if that play doesn't get made, we're potentially having a very different conversation in a game that runs seem to be coming at any time. And the 3 plays of the IKF that allows an extra base or allows a runner to be on, where you get a play like that made. And again, we have a lot of people that don't talk about Vlad's defense, and in a game with 21 runs would get overlooked. So I think it's fair to throw that in there and give the guy a little bit of flowers for that play. I think it was a good play.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get like completely on the Vladdy hate train. Like it's a play that needs to be made. It's a play that helped the Toronto Blue Jays win. So I can't necessarily get mad at Vladdy for what I'm going to say is doing what he's supposed to do out there is the way I'm going to phrase that. But we do have a big game, one that, has been increasingly more and more valuable, it seems like, at least amongst the fan base, because, again, a lot of people panicking about the bullpen for a good reason, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people kind of jumping ship, which Toronto Blue Jays fans, I think Toronto sports fans in general, seem very reactionary. I'm glad that we're not Maple Leafs fans as well. Maybe that's where it stems from. All the first-round exits, the hardships that's come with. The Toronto Blue Jays have had their own hardships as well. But very reactionary fan base is what it seems like. So I encourage you guys to, stay along, stay on the tracks. Like this team is still first in the American League. I know it hasn't been, the greatest stretch of all time, but we're still in a very good spot. They're going to have to, earn their keep here. They're going to have to keep playing good baseball or, play better baseball for sure down the stretch. If they keep playing like this, I'm not sure how well it's going to go. But again, a big game coming up, especially to carry the momentum into one of the biggest series, if not the biggest series of the year. Ton more that we want to get into, and we'll break it down right here on Locked On Blue Jays.
Today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments. And when you don't have a full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money comes into play. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Me and Carter talk about this all the time. Whether it's when we moved to the city, whether it was eating out or making a dumb purchase here or there because you just thought you could. And at the end of the day, if you don't have something looking out for you of where you're spending, what are investments looking like, how much money do you have? Monarch Money is a very important tool. And you know what, for me, it's something I've been really trying to utilize. So take advantage while you can. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONMLB. Before we tee up the rubber match of this series, let's talk a little bit about the offense that was. You get 12 hits, you get 12 runs. That's pretty damn good, Carter. And you know what? I've absolutely almost zero notes on what this offense was able to do. In talking about Vlad's game, I would like to see the power be there and not these sort of slap, bloop, whatever you want to call them, singles. But at the end of the day, as long as he's getting the job done in one fashion or another, I think you got to be a little bit happy. Hopefully this gets him a little bit more back on track because it was a little bit of a rough stretch since coming back from injury. But I think this team as a whole, the offense is absolutely not to blame for this game.
Yeah, I can't blame the offense for making it close when they scored 12 runs. But it seems like with Vladdy, like ever since that injury, it seems like he's just reset his timing issues. Like that's what we saw before the All-Star break is he was out in front of a lot of pitches. And then he was late on a lot of pitches for a very long stretch. It felt like it was 2.5 months. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was just late on every single fastball. Now it seems like he's a little bit out in front. We started to see him, wait a little bit longer, shoot some balls in the right field. That might be, him kind of tinkering with that timing. But he was like on fire player before he did have that injury. When you have George Springer, playing the way George Springer is, Bichette being one of the best players in all of baseball right now, leading the major leagues in hits once again. We talk all the time. We talk all the time about how easy of a bounce back call that was. But you have a lot of guys carrying this offense. Alejandro, Kirk, Daulton, Varsho, just everyone throughout this order. You get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. cooking, and you just get any sort of bullpen help whatsoever, which there is, some small signs that are pointing in some better directions. But with Vladdy, it's been, I think, predominantly a timing problem. Hopefully he can, continue to figure that out, because the lineup is on fire right now. Exactly like you said, you have Shane Bieber versus Zach Littell in this game. I'm not going to say it's a must win, but this would be a very big win going into a New York Yankee series. I think if Shane Bieber just kind of does what he's been doing in his rehab starts with the Toronto Blue Jays in his 2 starts, he gave us even 5 innings, a 2-run ball. The way this offense is playing, I think they do have some familiarity with Zach Littell. They can score a couple runs off of him, maybe make it a little bit of an easier game, going into an off day and going into the biggest series of the year against the New York Yankees, who are 2.5 games back of the Toronto Blue Jays for the lead in the AL East, tied with the Boston Red Sox, who the Blue Jays also get later on in the year. So a couple big series coming up, but you got to start against Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah, they don't call it the rubber match for no reason. This is a big game, and probably a game that we didn't necessarily think was going to be huge. I will say my prediction looks pretty good, even though that second game did not look very good. This team going 2-3
Depends
on the backside. Yeah, the offense you got to be thrilled about. But the pitching, I mean, again, it got to the point where I was pulling my hair out. It was that bad. I was losing it. I thought I was going to have to come on this podcast and crash out, because if they lost that game, there definitely would have been a point where I would have not been a happy camper. So yeah, you just got to hopefully the offense keeps it going like they have been doing. And Shane Bieber, I think you need a little bit more than 5 out of him in this outing. I'm thinking you probably need 6, if not, 6 1/3 or 6 2/3, something like that. Just because you used a lot of bullpen arms in this game, and some guys gave you some length, which was fantastic. Louis Varland gives you 1 2/3. Eric Lauer gives you 2 1/3. So, but at the end of the day, you do have an off day, which is massive before the Yanks and Blue Jays series. So, yeah, this is an interesting one. And I think for momentum-wise, I think if you go into Game 3 after what happened in Game 2 and you lose that one, I think there is a big disappointment in the fan base. So I think this win is absolutely massive. And you know what? It seems like every game we get to at this point of the season is going to be a massive game that the Toronto Blue Jays need to win. But that's what you get when you're in a heated AL East race with 3 of 3 playoff teams, realistically. So, yeah, it's massive. It's huge. I did want to throw in there Daulton Varsho, 17 home runs in 50 games. Unbelievable pace. Like, this guy gets injured and it seems like he doesn't miss a beat, even when he got hit. Which we never ended up talking about Blue Jays players getting hit. There was almost another one today that I think twice the Blue Jays almost got clipped by. But yeah, it's just nice to see this guy, the consistency be there at least, and it not be this guy misses time and then you're like, oh my goodness, now Daulton Varsho's reset again. So shout out Daulton Varsho for sure.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things that I could have went into there. I think with you have an off day Thursday, you have an off day Monday. I think everyone should be on the table. You don't necessarily want to throw Jeff Hoffman or Sir Anthony Dominguez, Louis Varland a bunch of times in a row, and then have them pitching 4 out of 6 days going into a Yankee series. So ideally, you get 7 from Shane Bieber. I don't know how realistic that necessarily
hopefully you
is.
get 8 or 9.
Yeah, it just gives you the complete game. Then you don't even have to worry about it whatsoever. But hey, maybe then that's too much rest, as everyone in the bullpen would have 2 days of rest. But we're kind of giving the bullpen a hard time here. But you look at the earned runs. You look at even the runs given up in this game. 4 1/3 of the outing was taken up by Jose Berrios, Eric Lauer. I know Eric Lauer is in the bullpen now. Those are 2 guys, and then the other 4 2/3 were bullpen arms. Sir Anthony Dominguez gives up a run. The bullpen wasn't that bad today. It was Eric Lauer, who was not very good, and then Jose Berrios, who had a million days rest, who was not very good. So it's kind of expected. Eric Lauer getting adjusted to his new role again, a guy that hasn't pitched consistently either. It's a little bit easier to predict just with the scheduling that John Schneider has used with some of these guys. But yeah, exciting game to get into. Hopefully we get another Bichette. You can continue on the Botember that's already been proclaimed after 2 days.
Lock it in.
September, whatever you guys want to roll with. But hopefully, the Blue Jays can continue on rolling and set themselves up well for a series against the New York Yankees, because I'm going to be glued to my seat for that one. But Brayden, is there anything else you want to add for this episode before we take off?
No, a lot more I want to get into. Obviously, I have a lot of thoughts and opinions right now, but it's too much for one episode. I mean, again, it seems like every video we come into, we say, oh, we'll keep this one short, we'll get through it, but then there's a billion things to go into, and it's hard to mash everything into one episode. So I'm sure we'll have lots more to talk about after tomorrow's game, heading into the off day, and then we do have an off day episode, so we'll have a ton of time to really get into sort of whatever we want to talk about, whatever we feel like. So tune in the rest of the week. They're going to be big episodes. Hopefully we'll get some of the boys back on the podcast for their take. Skylar Peters, Dallin Wilt, Tristan Baranowski, any of those guys, as we haven't heard from them in a while. So hopefully, maybe they have some takes that necessarily aren't ours, maybe some ideas that necessarily aren't ours. Leave your thoughts, comments, feelings down below in the comments, and we'll be back with you guys tomorrow.